Yeah, yeah, yeah. Jimmy. Lights, camera, action. Some people thought I quit and I ain't giving satisfaction. From a different era, writing rhymes up on napkins. What you had to say was more important, man, than trapping. Yeah, I'm talking back and speaking of contemporary. Gotta spit the truth.
What's good, family, and welcome to another episode of Jimmy Bond's Podcast right here on WPEB Radio, 88.1 FM, 95.1 FM, West Philadelphia. What's good, family? What's good? What's good? What got my hair? Got my partner here. What's up, Ty? How you feeling, bro?
All good in the neighborhood, JB. Live from the 215.
Live from the 215. You know how we do. And you know I have a special guest co-host with me today. Her name is Miss Lynn Austin from Hugs Around America. She is the founder of Hugs Around America Foundation. And I am so glad to have her joining us today. Thank you so much, Lynn. Go ahead and say what's up to the people.
What's up? Hello.
Hello. Well, remember, family, call us with your comments or your questions at 215-472-0881. Again, that's 215-472-0881. You can also email us at jimmybondspodcast@gmail.com. Again, that's jimmybondspodcast@gmail.com. It's JIMMYBONDS podcast@gmail.com. Also, family, remember you can follow us on Instagram at Jimmy Bonds Podcast, on Twitter at Podcast Bonds, and let's make sure you join the Jimmy Bond Podcast Facebook group. Let's continue to open the dialogue. Moving right along, family, we're continuing our series here at WPEB Radio, Every Voice, Every Vote, West Philly Voices, and I have a guest tonight. We have a guest tonight, family, that I'm so glad to have on. She is definitely doing her thing within the communities that she serves. But I'm going to give you a little intro before I bring her on. So let me just tell you a little bit about her. Anette Nance is Executive Director of the African American Affairs Commission of the Office at Governor Shapiro. She served honorably for 8 years in the United States Marine Corps and is an Operation Enduring Freedom veteran. She's also a distinguished alumna of the University of Pittsburgh, where she earned her master's degree in social work with a focus on community organization and social action. She also got a bachelor's in psychology from Ashford University. In 2021, she received the prestigious Pump 40 Under 40 honor, recognizing her creative vision, and unwavering passion to enhance the community. In 2023, she was awarded the SWAG, Social Work Appreciation of Greatness, for her consistent efforts in the field of social work. She is an activist, she is an advocate, a veteran, a champion of change and progress, a student, a scholar, a woman of faith, a leader, a wife, and a mom. I like to describe her as productive, organized, conscious, inclusive, determined, diligent, inspiring, diverse, unique, ethical, and honorable. Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you to the Executive Director of African American Affairs Commission of the Office of Governor Shapiro, Miss Anette Nance. Welcome to the show, Miss Annette. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I mean, sometimes I really forget about my bio, but when you read it, I need to take you everywhere with me. It's so very poetic.
Well, I appreciate that. For all of our guests that we get come on, we always want to give them the proper intro. And just doing our research on you, I didn't know half of the things that I learned from the time that we sat down next to each other. And to learn all those things, I was very honored, and it humbled me because I'm like, this woman is doing some major stuff within our community. So, let me kick off by asking this question. When you hear the name of our project, Every Voice, Every Vote, what do you hear? What does that make you feel like?
The first thing that comes to mind is, every vote does count. And so that means really reaching into the community and trying to see how we can get folks to understand the vote, the process, and also ways that they can volunteer or get involved in it. It's not just about, getting registered to vote, but what about making your plan to vote? What does that day look like? Or even mail-in ballot, voting, things like that. So I'm thinking about all the things around it, not just the day of voting, but what does that look like and how do you plan that out? And then how do you also tell your family and your friends about it too? Because it's not just a one-person job.
Yeah, that's true. I was on my way to here to do the show, and I saw a commercial that talked about, planning your voting day. Like, what the importance of planning around that. When you're going to vote, where's your poll place? You know what I mean? Who are the people that can direct you to those to get the information to where your poll place is? I mean, all that is important and vital. I can talk all day, but I'm gonna let my brother Ty ask the next question. Brother Ty, go ahead, man.
Yes. Ms. Nance, how you doing this evening?
Good, and yourself?
I am doing great. So tell me, the life of an executive director of African American Affairs. What is the life of a executive director of the African American Affairs like?
It's a lot of things. I'm trying to what is one word when I think of it? It is something that is constant movement, and not just in the sense of physical, but in the sense of thought, in the sense of the way that we connect with our internal state agencies and understanding and providing our perspective, especially the African American perspective, whether it's PennDOT or Pennsylvania Council of Arts, trying to really ensure that artists across the Commonwealth are aware of that state agency, and especially if they have businesses, but also getting Black and brown businesses registered as vendors for the state. So when they put out those requests for proposals, folks are already registered. They can go ahead and go through the process versus, not knowing what's going on. It's also, for me, I'm traveling across the state, so I'm getting to know a lot of places that I didn't know existed, because I live on the other side of the state, so in Pittsburgh. So I know a good bit of southwestern PA, but I'm getting to know all these other areas and also learning a lot of Black history throughout the state as well. Is working with our elected officials, the various caucuses that are within the legislature. So if you all have been paying attention, which I hope you have,
Oh yeah, we have.
the Black Maternal Health Caucus that kicked off, that Rep. Mays, Rep. Cephas, and Rep. Curry are doing that work and championing on with that. And so talking with our elected officials, a lot of stakeholder engagement. So I was in Philadelphia in June, so really getting to know the landscape there, what leaders are doing, connecting with the African American museum there with Dr. Jordan and the great work that she's doing there. So it is a lot of things. So I guess in short, to kind of summarize, that was kind of long, right? So that's connecting with our elected officials, working internally with a lot of the state agencies, but also my colleagues. So every room I'm in, I would be remiss if I don't also talk about the other commissions. There's 5 other ones: Latino, LGBTQ, AAPI, women, and then our newest one, Next Generation Engagement. So that's the 16 to 26 age range, really engaging our youth. We know how important it is for our youth to be educated in these spaces, so they can understand what it's like on a state level, what's going on that really includes them, so that we can keep them here in Pennsylvania, as things kind of go forward.
Wow. So what programs or services have you seen so far that work or has worked for the people of the community as far as African Americans?
Any specific programs, we mean related to voting type, or just in general?
Voting, yes. We're in general too, yes.
Okay. Yeah, so the latest program that made a lot of waves is the automatic voter registration, which is something that's really important. Seeing the numbers go up in that, because we know a lot of folks, you have a license, you're going to do that process. And so that's been a successful program there. And we had received a lot of support from a lot of elected officials and others nationally. Pennsylvania continues to be that national leader in a lot of spaces.
Yeah.
But we also know there's a couple other things that we're really pushing and educating folks on in the voter space. So really putting out those infographics about, poll workers, where they're needed, the websites, and understanding that, and continue to educate people when the last day was to register to vote, especially electronically on social media, emailing lists and things of that nature of when to turn in said ballot, so folks are aware. So it really making a huge push on social media and utilizing a lot of things digitally, because we know that it's working.
Yeah, that makes sense. Lynn, I know you got something you want to ask.
Yes. So you talked about the programs that are working. I would love to see something take place in the schools, prior to graduation, so prior to them turning 18, 17, 16, 17, around that age group, where when they turn 18, it's not a heavy lift. They understand the purpose of the voting, and each we get excited when we talk about the presidency, right? But all the other different layers and times of voting, the turnout is low. But if we go back and we start in teenage years, right? Educating them on the purpose of taking your vote serious in every level, every
Voting year, pretty much. Voting season, as they would say.
season, and the Supreme Court right now in our area is important, right? We're fighting for that seat. But if they understood the importance of getting to the polls, and we are registering them, you are seeing those numbers go up, but the educational piece, I would love to see that.
Yeah, so there is a program. So I'm gonna write this down and I'm gonna send it to Jimmy and be like, this is what I was talking about, because I can't remember the name at the moment. But this program, I mean, I want to ensure I have the right one, is it does recognize high school students in a sense of like how many folks they register within their high schools, and so they get recognized for that. And that is something that I've been talking with other school officials, those who are principals at schools, and saying, make sure that you have your folks look into these programs and support your students, right? We can have the students do a lot of things, but we know that the school administrators have to support these efforts. They have to email folks like myself or others in state agencies to really get these programs moving. So that's one thing there. But I do have some notes, and I think something I really want to make sure that my comms folks know that I share
Yeah.
when it comes to youth, because we know that Pennsylvania's youth turnout actually was the sixth highest in the country.
Amen.
So it beat the national average by 23%, which is a pretty strong margin.
Yeah.
So really wanting to highlight that. And then the commission that I mentioned prior to, so Next Generation Engagement. So that's Ruby Mundock, who's the executive director of that commission. And so some things that she's been doing is really connecting with universities and kind of educating people on the process of voting there as well, in the sense of you can register to vote, on your college campuses. And so really, when we think even younger, we just have to continue to have the conversation of civic engagement and talking to those folks about, maybe those social studies teachers, or, how folks kind of get involved in these other races. And so that's our Young Dems groups and things like that, or, whichever of those kind of civic engagement things. So we're really working to see how we can continue to do things like that. And also that's something that, organizations, if they want to partner and kind of get more information on state government things, or they're like, they would like myself to come out and do those things, or even connecting to see what collaboration and partnership can grow from that. Definitely open to those ideas, because we know how important civic engagement is. I think something that I didn't realize, as now I know a lot about state government because I'm working in it. I've been doing these different things, worked as a chief of staff or a state rep. But when I was 16 some years old, I don't remember being involved as I see a lot of youth are involved now.
Nice.
And they're
Nice.
very intentional with involvement. And one thing that I always tell people is that, not political wise, but getting involved in government, it's around you everywhere you go, from art to food to all these different spaces. There is, something that you can connect this to. And so if you can kind of make it real for, young people, and talking about these certain spaces, they're like, oh, now I understand why there is this law for XYZ, or
Yeah.
now I see why, maybe maybe they learned about Department of Insurance, which there is on the state level that kind of regulates a lot of different things.
Yeah.
Or, education, learning about that gets them excited. If they also know, their state representative and what committees they're on, what committees like they serve on, because that's something I try to tell people, it looks nice and fancy to be the elected official, but you also have to know the background work. I know I kind of went like all over the place with that, but I think that's something for young people to get educated on too, is when they understand the committees, whether it's education, children, youth, and families, and seeing how those items are voted on,
Yeah.
and making sure to check out the state website on those things.
Absolutely.
I'm a big proponent of telling people, hey, people say they don't like politics. I don't like politics. It's too whatever. But I say you deal with politics every day when you wake up in the morning. All right, it's politics and everything, which means that your vote is devoted to that. You know, what are and one of the other things I always talk about is how a lot of times we see names on the ballot. When we go to the voting, we go to the polls. It's a name on that sheet on that ballot, and you check the names off and you put it in the seat, you put it in the box, and that's it. I'm done. Right? I voted. But I always feel like there's something more than the names that are on the ballot, on those ballots. The issues and the concerns that face people who are voting for our voters. What are some of the things that you're hearing? You're out there in the streets, as I would say. You're in the streets, right? What are some What are some of the things that people that you're hearing are major concerns for them within this voting season right now?
Yeah, so the biggest one is education. So funding for education, but also school curriculum has kind of been some things I've heard. And then there's also been other areas of understanding some of the policies or where can they go to read about certain things. I know I was just speaking to some social workers about just kind of really getting engaged. And so they were like, what is the process? What is that, what does that look like? And so that's really connecting and looking at the kind of the committees and seeing what's being voted on and kind of tracking it that way.
Yeah.
So being able to kind of see who's sponsoring said bills or, what does that look like? But then it's also checking out the governor's website that has, I believe we call it newscast, that shows all the different like executive orders that are being signed. What does it do? What is the purpose? When does it take into effect? What communities is it reaching? And so I think that source of information is really, truly important. As we kind of move through a lot of these spaces and understanding certain things, even issues such as gun violence prevention. There are a lot of grants that the Pennsylvania Commission on Crime and Delinquency has been working on and things of that nature. I know there's currently a grant out right now, nonprofit security grant, really looking into making sure that nonprofits have the right, camera systems and all these other areas and updating them to really ensure their safety. So that's an area right there that I've heard about as well. And so in the technical assistance for that, so folks can, get on the website, connect, and then talk with the folks who are managing that to kind of understand what's needed. And then also another thing when looking at these areas is to connect with your elected officials as well.
Yes.
Is to say, this is in your district. I'm applying for said grant. I would, like your support, or, I'd want to just understand this a little bit more too. How do you understand it? Explain it to me. So I think those kind of go hand in hand in that kind of relationship.
You hear that, Ty? She said contact a local official. So I got State Rep Curry. I'm going to make sure I hit her up so she knows. I'm going to say, look, the executive director told me to contact you, okay?
She said it.
That's what she told me.
That's what she said.
Although I know her, you know what I mean? That's what I'm telling her. The executive director told me to call you, but...
I have her on speed dial.
So, one of the things...
Great. You have to know your elected official.
You have to. I find that to be probably like that's politics 101. Who's representing you? You know what I mean? Who's speaking for your voice? Like, go find out who that person is and speak to them about how your voice can be loud, heard a little bit better than what it's heard sometimes. The one thing I always want to ask, you gave me the commissions, you gave me the 5 commissions that are part of the governor's office. Definitely African American Affairs, Latino, LGBTQ, women. One aspect that really jumps out to me when it comes to voting anyway is the amount of African American women that vote, and then in contrast, the amount of African American men that vote. It's a drastic contrast. And I always wondered, as within our elected officials and the offices and the commissions, what do we do to improve how black men perceive politics and voting? I guess in some way, black women are more motivated, they're more, organized. Let's get it, let's go. Girl, we're gonna have to vote. Let's go vote. You know what I mean? But for men, it's a little bit different. Our numbers tend to lack and fall off. Why do you feel that is, and what can we do to help improve that?
I think it's a number of different circumstances, right? So the way that we think about some things, socioeconomic status can also play a role into that. There can also be some other areas of like community where you are in your community and where you're, surrounding yourself. So going back to what I said before, when you're making your voting plan, who are you including? Are you including your mom, your aunt, your grandma, your grandpa, all those people? How do you say the same way you can do a group text and say, hey, what y'all, who gonna be at the cookout? Who all
Right.
gonna be there? You
Right.
can do the same thing and say, who all is coming to XYZ? Because we know there have been a lot of voter engagement initiatives where they have, kind of like bring the polls to the party type thing, and just kind of really focusing on community. So I think the engagement has to be very intentional. If you know that you are going, make sure that you ask everyone else if they're going.
Yeah.
And if you're comfortable, also, if you are at work and, people are talking about certain things, I think how to approach those things and kind of go from there. But I think in community, when we look at a lot of even our youth serving organizations, to really kind of start to bring that, what is your plan? Do you go with your parents? Because we know a lot of folks don't usually take their kids. They're like, oh, I don't want to stay in line. But maybe you should start taking your kids with you so that they can understand and see the process.
Yeah.
The earlier that they see this process, the better.
Yeah.
So that they can understand what it looks like, see a ballot, in hand, and to be able to talk about it.
Now, you talked about the educational piece. I'm a big advocate for we have to find a way to diminish, if not get rid of, student debt. I think that's one of the biggest hindrance for us as a community. We want to move ahead. We have to get degreed. We got to pay for it in some kind of way. When it comes to voting, why are more people not jumping on that particular topic when it comes to voting? We think about other topics, we think about healthcare, we think about crime mainly. That's one of the first things people think about is crime. But if I could save money from my education and find a way to move forward, that might be more of a priority than, say, crime would, right? Me personally, I'm just saying for a person, a citizen within. What do you think that, educationally, how can voting assist helping get rid of student debt?
Yeah, that's a big question. I think the way is first, we have to understand it all on the federal level and how to impact state. We need to kind of really be intentional with that. And so I think that's where we just have to really kind of dissect it in that sense of just trying to understand it. It's not something that you're going to teach someone in like 2 seconds, but we have to kind of dig a little bit deeper with it. But then when we get to voting, folks have to also already know their issues. And sometimes because other issues seem a little bit more tangible in the sense of, I have a child, so I'm more invested in education in the sense of the kind of education said child is getting, if they're getting a certain books. And so I think it's the way that maybe the issues are kind of dressed and kind of advertised.
Yeah.
And so I think as the state, we are really trying to ensure that people are educated on how to vote. What does that look like in between? And that's something that, we can kind of take back to leadership to kind of say, this is what we're looking at. How do we kind of break this down from the macro and bring it down to the micro?
Yeah, I definitely understand that. Ty, go ahead, bro.
Yes. Ms. Nance, can you go into the dynamics of political consulting? I'm curious on that one. Can you touch on that for me?
You said political consulting?
Yes.
She's like, wait a minute. Wait, tell her why. Tell her why, Ty. Tell her why.
Yes. All right, so, here's my story. Well, the other day, a politician ran into me, councilwoman at large, Kendra, I forgot the last name, but one of her runners as well. They stopped me in the drugstore, and they was asking me to come out and vote, why I should vote, so on and so forth. I said, but just hold on 1 second. I want to ask you a couple of questions. He said, well, do you vote? I said, well, I'm trying to, but I'm not sure. But y'all need to show more accountability for me. I said, give me a second. Let me put this prescription in. I put the prescription in. I turn around. He's walking away. So I chase him down and say, yo, my man. I said I was going to, oh, yeah. But he kind of like brushed me off.
Yeah.
In politics, how do you get to the politicians to let them know that they need to be more I guess, involved
Yeah.
with the people that
Selection.
as far as in the streets, they go out there once in a while. You see them around election time, but after election time, you don't really hear from them or see them.
Yeah.
As politicians, do they get consulted on how to deal with the people or how to interact with the people?
I think that can be subjective. But also something that the governor talks about is like there's no wrong way to get to government. So we know that there's a text, you can text now, and he actually reads them and responds. And so I think it's about how we engage community intentionally. And so every politician is not the same, but one way that you can one way that is a continuous accountability is contacting and continuing to send those emails, calls. They have a feedback inbox that someone monitors, and it's supposed to respond within 24 48 hours. You can mail items, all these various ways of communication to really hold people accountable so that they can give you the information that you need. Or especially when it comes to the council people and you state reps. Now, I'm not saying just pop up in their office like
No, no, I'm popping up.
aggressively,
I'm popping up.
but
Yo, hey,
but
hey.
but if you just so happen to be in the neighborhood, they're in the community anyways, and you say this is X, and I'm trying to get to Y. I really would like the assistance on so forth and so forth, so on. There are a lot of state reps that I've seen that are, if they have events, you should attend that event. If they're having a senior lunch, I mean, you might not be a senior, but you can still go to the senior lunch.
Oh,
You
yeah.
never know. You might have a neighbor that needs to know about the senior services that, that they're providing, that they're trying to get more information and engagement on.
Yeah, that's real.
So I think that that's just another way, that you can kind of say, hey, I saw you at the so-and-so store, and I was trying to talk about a little bit more things, but, and I think it's also about perspective, right? Because in the moment, they do kind of contact some do kind of do the whole, like, when it's voting time, I'm gonna engage. But then it's also, we have to remember that at the end of the day, all these politicians are human, right? They can't talk to every single person, but they want to be intentional, and they have staff to be able to ensure that any problem that you have is met, or whatever it is that you need to talk about, to ensure that you get to the right space.
Okay.
Right.
You also deal with nonprofits, am I correct?
Yes.
Yes. Can you tell me what are some of the benefits of nonprofits?
You mean dealing with some of the benefits of like communicating with them?
That and becoming nonprofits. Are there benefits to being nonprofits as far as dealing with the government?
Yeah, well, I mean, we know that the whole meaning of nonprofits is to serve the good of the people at the end of the day. To solve this problem. What is the problem, or what is the issue that that person or that organization is in lane to assist? And so when you tie into government, you think about the different spaces that sometimes it's a funding thing, or other times it's really connecting to get information and to have those kind of information sessions. You have someone from the state agencies come to said nonprofit, depending on what the topic is, to talk about what they're doing and how to make sure that they're having community engagement. Like when it came to the broadband issue, because we know that a lot of communities do not have high-speed internet.
Yeah.
And so that is someone from a state agency coming to a nonprofit that may be doing maybe they're doing a lot of things in STEM, but they know that sometimes maybe, the internet's not as great. So we need to get more people here to advocate on this so that we can get more people aware of this issue that's, hindering our programming. And so that's where, that kind of relationship with government and nonprofits go. Or it's when the Department of Banking and Securities does a kind of like a fraud sessions talking about the elderly. And so talking about what that looks like. They go into the communities and do this. And so the nonprofit has the space, has the clientele, or, the constituents that are there. So the State Department will come there and kind of give that information, and really trying to come to the people on these different things. And that's where another example of how nonprofit and community go together with state government, because a lot of these sessions that these state agencies have are usually in the nonprofit space to make sure that they're reaching the people.
Yeah, I can dig it. Go ahead.
So I am a nonprofit founder and CEO of Hugs Around America.
Hugs Around America.
So a hug saved my life, literally.
Yes.
It's in the cancer space of preventative survivorship and treatment options, clinical trials, and community of color, right? Trying to get us to show up in the numbers. And so I had my inaugural event this year, and the information, it was called Moving for Wellness. And the goal was to tie in moving, exercise, and not technically calling it exercise, but fun, like double dutch, Zumba, hula hoop, and line dancing to decreasing the risk of a cancer diagnosis or diabetes, right? And so I went around outside of my representative, where I live, just trying to get so many different state representatives and councilmen and representatives involved. And I kept hearing, "You're not in my district. It's not in my district." I was like, but wait a minute, this information is so delicious. I want your constituents to hear it. I need them to see it, to be a part of.
Yeah.
And so that was so, I was taken aback. And so the councilman that did show up, and he says, well, Lynn, you have to bring it in your community. We want to do it. Let's do it again. But how do I get everyone? And I was very intentional going to our community and individuals who are in charge to look like us, my brother, my father, who can reach out and have a conversation with their constituents and say, listen, let's be a part of this event. And so I will digress and let you answer that question.
I've seen a lot of elected officials go to events that are not in their district. So I think I would start with, how are you engaging the constituents in the district where you are currently and connecting with that state rep, the senator, also connecting on the federal level. So, your congresswoman, congressmen, those folks. Continuing to include them, send those invites, connect with their staff person, their district office director or chief of staff, so that they're aware of you. I mean, it needs to be to the point where you're calling and they're like, there she goes.
There she is.
Like, it needs to get to that point because they need to know, it's like that saying, the elevator pitch, right?
Yeah.
You need to be able to talk about what you do in a short amount of time and keep people engaged. So you need to continue to, whether it's, you share your one pager with a staff person, you email them, you invite them to your various events, you talk about your progress. What have you done so far? What does that look like for what have been your wins? Where are the areas that you need improvement on that you're going to continue to improve? And then also kind of connecting it to some of the things, that they may be supporting. So if you know that there's a certain person that's supporting various issues, and it may not specifically be in the health space, but how they are connected. But also, the work that you're doing, how do you connect it where you also get maybe others who will have nonprofits that have maybe youth serving or things like that, make it into like a fellowship or a partnership. The partnership and collaboration is really huge. And I think that is something that continues to be a way that people grow. And especially here in the state, we collaborate all the time. And so I give you those things of, really continuing to connect with all those folks on all those levels. It can feel tiring, but when you see the fruit that of the work and the product, I think that is what's going to be real rewarding. And then lastly, I'll say, send me an invite. If I'm on that side of the state, I will do my best to be there.
Well, I'll send it in enough time where you can be intentional about being on this side.
Listen, I'm gonna highlight that word. That is a word. I think they both shared that word several times. I'm about to tattoo that on my arm. Intentional. You better be intentional about the things that you do. If you're not, what you talk about the elevator pitch. Man, I had the worst elevator pitch for for executive director Nance. If you had seen my elevator pitch, you'd been like, bro, what's wrong with you? Like, you okay? I'm sitting there. She's sitting there. So what do you do? I don't know. I got a podcast. I got a radio station.
I talk to the people.
I talk to the people. I'm here because for the people. I'm just here for the people. That's all you got to know. You know, but
I mean, you just have a lot of jobs.
right. You know, I'm not Jamaican, but I got a lot of jobs. You know what I mean? But but I always find it to be interesting because you're on a whole other side of the state. All right, you're on more on the you're located in Harrisburg, but you definitely are from the Pittsburgh area. So Philly is a little bit a different animal, I would say. You know, it's a different place, it's a different community. You know what I mean? But something I've noticed that I actually read a story about coming on here this morning or this evening was that I think on our side, as far as I'm an independent leaning Democrat. That's what I am, right? So I read a story talking about how Philly voter turnout is decreasing compared to other counties within the state. And it rubbed me a certain kind of way because of what it made it seem like, not the story itself, but just the data. It made it seem like Philly is kind of like, well, we know we're going to vote Democrat, so oh well, I don't have to go vote. And the numbers are coming down. Just a stat, for example, Allegheny County is where the county Pittsburgh is located, right? Allegheny, is that right? That area?
That's
so
right.
Allegheny County has 133,000 fewer voters than Philly does, right? But the last election, midterms, there were 67,000 more votes in that county than there were in Philadelphia by itself. So I bring all that up because I think a lot of times as Democrats, we get complacent. We get very, hey, you know what? I'm good. We good. You know, we know who's going to be elected. I think that's such a uninformed way of really approaching voting and approaching how the government, the city government is run. All that stat I just gave, all that data, all the thing I just said. What do you think about that? You're from the other side of the state. You go through all back and forth between Philly and everywhere else in Harrisburg. What does that make you think about when those kind of numbers come up?
It just reminds me that we need to do a better job with education. You know, the more that you know, the more that you can be strategic with that information. And so as we continue to think about what voter engagement looks like, and not just in the sense of, we only are going to do voter engagement in the times of voting, but also the other areas of it, of just the process and where do we go? How do I even know what to vote about? Or what things are currently affecting me? And I think sometimes when I've talked to some people, they don't necessarily have the language to understand the issue.
Yeah.
And so these things are affecting you, but how do you have the language to then connect with people?
I mean, I think that you talked about that and they use a great word. You say connect. And I think that word kind of is one word that sometimes candidates they fall a little bit short on sometimes connecting to the demographic of people that they service. Now that's just my opinion. I'm not at the state house. I'm not in the state reps positions. But just from observation, I find it to be there's a difficulty. I also find that sometimes some of our state reps are more in tune with other things than what are part of what the community needs. That's just my perspective being a constituent. I would like to. I would always like to find a better solution to how we can improve engagement. Education is definitely key, but I think that sometimes we as a community, we need a little bit more than just education. I always think about things that hit us home. Like barbecues, like parties, I know this is bad to say, but we have to find a way to connect with us on a more personal level than a candidate level. You know what I mean? And that's what I yearn for our candidates and our state reps or our political officials is to find a way to connect to our community a little bit more on a personal level than just on a candidate, constituent, citizen level. What do you feel about that?
It sounds like you're saying we need to make government more fun. How do we make it more fun to then
Because
engage
listen,
people?
listen, because folks done tuned out. They tuned out. They feel like their government. They don't know anything about their government. They feel like their government has failed them in a sense. The government hasn't paid attention to them. So how do we make it more engaging to show that hey, the government is paying attention? And I'm not. Listen, I say all the things. I know I'm on a negative line, but I'm gonna be honest. Governor Shapiro has done some phenomenal things within his state. What happened on I-95 was in the drastic turnaround of it. You can't do nothing but applaud what that man did. Look, when you see a politician, you better applaud him what he's doing. All right, what he did on 95 was absolutely bananas in such a short period of time. Now it wasn't him. He didn't go fix the highway himself. Okay, it wasn't him out there sweating and fixing the highway. It's definitely some blue collar workers that are from the city or from the area. But his initiative and his ideals and his push for to get that done was major. When was the last time somebody got something done so fast in Philly? When was the last time? Normally you got to jump through hoops, red tape, blue tape, purple tape, and get a seal and a sign of approval to get it notarized. Okay, that's normally how long these things take. But to see him do that fast, that's why I say I'm not going to be the person that's like, yeah, well, they don't do anything. Governor Shapiro was definitely. I mean, I've been watching this man since he was on MSNBC. He was the Attorney General, coming on like every week. I would watch him. I'd like, this is the Attorney General of our state. I didn't know this. You know what I'm saying? I didn't know who he was. But I ever found out who he was when he ran for governor, I was like, okay, I know this bull. I can support this. But I say all that to say that I'm on both sides of the fence. I'm not a person that's like, forget these candidates, forget these state reps. When you see something good, you acknowledge it. But when you see something that needs to be changed or challenged, you have to bring that to their attention. And connecting with the candidate and the constituents seems to be a big, it's a big separation. But it seems like it's by an ocean. We're all separated by oceans. We can't even come together to get each other on the same page.
Yeah. I mean, we know that Governor Shapiro let us know that he is very competitive. He says that, and he means it. He really wants to ensure that we are leading the way in a lot of different areas. There has been some amazing things that have happened within the last 7 or so months of the administration in the way that we're connecting with people and the way that we're trying to have people also see how they can get connected with government to understand what's going on.
Yeah.
The various state departments are doing their engagement tours. We know the drug and alcohol program, they are doing stuff there. So these other various agencies are engaging people and really being intentional there so that folks can know that they're there. And then also, see that people of color are in these spaces. The secretary of that department is a Black woman.
See?
Dr. Latika Jones Davis. And, that is something that's amazing there. And even in education, a Black man is also running. That is the secretary, Dr. Khalid Mumin. So just thinking about these spaces where we have so much representation, that should ignite people to understand the importance of these roles, how they also trickle down and what that looks like. And all these other spaces in government as well, not just maybe the usual things. A lot of those spaces are a little bit more external than probably the Department of Insurance and all these other spaces. But it provides us with the knowledge that we probably didn't have before about these spaces.
Yeah.
And also understanding and, kind of like reading their resume, getting to know them as the person that got to these spaces, as they kind of go around the state and have these really engaged talks.
I mean, I always believe lead by example, right? And Governor Shapiro, he's doing that in every way, shape, and form. So you got to lead by example. We just need a couple more of him around certain areas. Now, I'm not going to mention no areas, but we just need a couple more of his type of, his type of motivation within our leadership. It's to be honored. So I'm gonna make sure I say that. You tell him I said it if you speak to him. Tell him Jimmy said it.
Of course, he always loves hearing from folks.
Listen.
So it'd be great.
Listen, okay. So on a personal note, we're not gonna hold you too much longer. On a personal note, how has it been? I mean, when I'm running through your resume, right, and I'm reading all the distinguished things that you have done, and your as I say, track record extensive, right, Ty?
Yes.
as that is, how do you manage? How do you manage this, being a wife and a mom and traveling as much as you do? And yo, she is on both coasts or both sides of the state on a regular basis. So how do you manage this?
I think for me, the first thing I'm gonna always say, like we in church, I just want to thank the Lord, who's the leader of my life.
Yeah,
You
Amen.
know,
yeah,
so for me, very based in faith. So for me, that's my foundation. But also in this work, right? We talk about all these different issues. You have to learn when to have self care. You have to learn to really sit with yourself. You have to do that self examination. One thing I was just telling someone earlier today, being in the Marine Corps was not the easiest, but they broke you down to build you back up. And I think that is something that puts you in a different strength is your mental.
yeah,
To be in all these roles, you really have to ensure that you nurture and grow and cultivate these things that you're learning and really putting into the things that you talk about with your mental health, because we know mental health is so important.
yeah.
Um, and also, I just really love being able to connect with people. My biggest thing is I want to educate people about how I got to these spaces. If someone says, I also I was in I did local government for some time. So what does that look like? How do you get people to understand, getting their names on the ballot? How do you understand, get them to understand where their office is that they need to connect with? Um, and then also just that it's, don't put yourself in a box. One thing that, my resume, I haven't just done one thing. I know there's people who do like to do just one thing, not no offense to them, but the biggest thing for me is to learn and to kind of grow through these different things. I worked in early childhood at the University of Pittsburgh. I've done things, I worked as a chief of staff, those are two different worlds. But I have, my background in psychology, but that all connects because as we think about all these things, the biggest thing for me is to really ensure that people are in the center. We are working on programs that are for people. We are providing people with this information. And I believe it was Dr. Cornell West that probably, I think it is, I might paraphrase a little bit, but you can't lead the people if you don't love the people. So
That's the
something for
truth.
me is I just continue to think of all the people along the way who have helped me to be where I am. My mom came from a different country. We didn't always have family, but I knew there was people that, God would bring along to really assist in these different ways. And so I think that for me is the center is just continuing to make sure that we help people, educate people. And I think I would say I'm pretty accessible in a sense of, people email me, they text, me to be able to understand what's going on. If there's something that I may not understand, instead of telling someone I don't know and then that's the end of the conversation,
Yeah.
I will say just, let me connect with the right person to make sure that we both are understanding what's going on so that I can kind of keep this in my arsenal for moving forward.
See.
So I definitely hear the passion and the love for the people in your voice.
Yeah.
Your heart is speaking. I hear the words, but I also definitely hear your heart.
She wear it on her sleeve.
Yeah, so it's definitely a blessing to have someone like you in that chair doing what you do.
Yes. I mean, if it had to be another executive director of African American Affairs, normally that kind of title you would see a little bit older black woman maybe, with she's had 35 years in government, and listen, I'm being so stereotypical right now. I'm just being, but this is normally what you would expect. So to see such youth in that position and knowing that that's the progress. That's where we need to be. You need to put some youth in these positions in order to not just stay in the positions, but to see them move forward in the way they're supposed to move forward. So I appreciate it. I agree with Lynn. I can hear it in your voice. Ty said he agreed too. We can hear your passion for the people more than anything else. And then for me, if you about the people, listen, I love it. Like I'd rather you be for the people than not be for anything else. And I appreciate that. And let me also mention two more things, like real quick. First of all, before I even let you go, thank you. And I hate to say this is such a slogan, but thank you for your service. Thank you for doing what you did. Thank you for going in when other people wouldn't and sacrificing what you had to sacrifice, and you getting the 8 years that you served honorably. So thank you for your service. I don't think enough people might say that to you. My dad was in the Marines. I understand that how Marines, how they go, what they face sometimes. So thank you for what you do. And the other thing is, how close are we to getting that doctorate?
I actually just passed my comprehensive exam, so we're
Awesome.
another step closer. So
That's what I'm
I don't want
talking
to put
about.
myself and say like next year, but we will see as I do this job and all my other things. But it's coming. It's coming.
That's love. We gonna be
Awesome.
like Dr. Anette Nance, Executive Director of African American Commission at the Governor's of Shapiro's office. I'm waiting for that title to come. When you get it, please tell me. Don't be like, don't be trying to like pop up one day and I see you on social media and you pop up and she got her doctorate. I'm like, oh come on, man. But no, listen,
Congratulations.
I was honored to hear that. I think that's a major milestone, particularly for women of color, to push that and get that. So congratulations on that. Like you ain't gonna come over here and we just gonna ask you questions and you just sit there and answer. Now we're gonna talk about you because you're doing some good work. You're doing some major things, and we greatly appreciate you sharing with us. Team, is there something you want to say to Executive Director before we let her go?
Look out for the emails. They're coming. I am grateful to have sat in. Thank you so much, Jimmy, for allowing me to partake and just listen. And so sometimes just quiet and listening, you can learn a lot. And I did, and I'm appreciative for all that you do.
For sure. Ty?
Yes, I just got off the phone with Marvel Studios. They're going to drop Wonder Woman and replace her with you. So, congratulations.
She is a superhero without a cape, boy. That's the truth. Superhero without a cape. That's love. Well, is there something you want to say to the people before we let you go?
I was gonna make a comment. So what's actually funny is that when I got out the Marine Corps and finished my contract, there is so everyone sometimes they get these different plaques. My plaque, I'm gonna send a picture if you don't believe me. My plaque is literally like the rank that I was at the top and Wonder Woman at the bottom.
Oh.
So I'm gonna have to send a picture. So yeah, and it has like my medals on there. But something I want to leave with the people is to really do your homework on what's going on in your community, the issues that are really that you see, whether it's there's a pothole on your street and you're like, who do I contact? Or there's things you're seeing at your church. How do you get your churches involved in civic engagement, or your any other nonprofit? How do you really get youth to kind of also get involved and excited about this work? And then lastly, if folks want to contact me, I'll leave my email, anance@pa.gov. Always willing to answer questions, connect where I can, and ensuring that we continue to have a seat at the table. The more that I get the information from the community on all sides of the state, especially for Black and brown folks, that's really what I want to make sure that I am advocating for at all times, on all levels, locally, mostly at the state and federally, making sure that folks are just aware of what's going on. And you can find me on LinkedIn as well. Always love to connect with people on social media, but really I think making sure that folks are aware of the commission social media, and so I'll share that so that folks can connect and kind of stay up to date with what we have going on. Always willing to connect with people, and I think it's one of the greatest things that we can do is to connect, collaborate as we kind of move forward.
Yeah, that's real. That's real. And for me, I'm thankful for you coming on tonight, family, because again, you never know who you're sitting next to. I swear. I'm gonna get my elevator pitch together. I promise, and it is together. It's been since that time we met in June. I've got it together. Okay, I ain't gonna do it here on air, but I got it together. And I felt so embarrassed when I walked out of that event that night, because I was like, yo, I just completely debacled that whole conversation. I don't know what I was thinking. I ain't had no business cards on me. I was just complete. I was like, must have been one of them days, boy. But she took my wounds and she said, here's my card. just take my information.
Yeah, contact me when you get a chance.
Listen, she said, just call me.
Would you get yourself together?
You okay, right? I know you all right. You okay. You all right.
Yeah.
So You know, some people might take that this dude is a joke. Well, why? I'm not going to talk to him. I'm the executive director of the governor's office. What am I not going to talk to him? But you were so humble and so gracious in how you communicated with me and stayed in contact with me. And I can't thank you enough just for coming on tonight, sharing what you shared. The information is key. Information is power. Information is important. And, you know, not just because you're working for the commission, but it's also important that we understand why voting is important for our everyday lives and who represents us. And if you're an example of the people that represent us from the governor's office, please continue to be that person because you were doing a phenomenal job.
Thank you.
No, thank you for joining us. We're going to let her go, family. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we continue to do our show, Jimmy Bond's Podcast, right here on WPEB Radio, 88.1 FM, 95.1 FM. Remember, family, you call us with your comments or your questions at 215-472-0881. Again, that's 215-472-0881. You can also email us at jimmybondspodcast@gmail.com. Again, that's jimmybondspodcast@gmail.com. It's JIMMYBONDS podcast@gmail.com. Listen to the Jimmy Bonds Podcast right here on WPEB Radio, 88.1 FM, 95.1 FM, West Philadelphia. We'll be right back.